That's what your piece of paper says. Okay.
Biological men in our restrooms, locker rooms, sporting events.
61% of women identify as feminists in America, and I think a large portion of that 61% probably doesn't identify with the person who's losing their mind on Twitter.
It's an attitude of superiority. Men are money, money, money. I'm going to get what I want out of them, and there's no repercussions because he rules the world.
It seems like we're picking certain things that women do that we don't like and attributing it to feminism.
It's not the true definition of what it is.
You still haven't answered my question.
Hey everybody, tonight we're debating whether or not feminism has betrayed women, and we are starting right now with Stardust opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us. Stardust is taking generally no position tonight. Thanks for being with us, Stardust. The floor is all yours.
Thanks. So I imagine some people think that feminism has betrayed women because of the high frequency that women decide to go out and work and provide for themselves. I imagine that some think that women are betraying their biological needs and wants to create a family and care for their offspring. But I would push back on this. Women have not just recently started working. Globally and historically, women have always worked. The idea that women didn't work outside the home is quite the myth. It was only true for a select group of women who were wealthy enough within a specific era. In fact, a lot of traditional society, it used to be that not only did women work, but children also worked. The idea that feminism was anti-family was something that was also started back in the 70s when conservatives were systematically accusing feminists in the women's movement of betraying the family or not caring for the family. If anything, feminism has pushed for more benefits for families historically. Feminists were vital in the 70s when it came to changing how we valued unpaid homemaking labor. Because of this, ever since 1977, homemakers can have their own IRAs to save for retirement independently of their spouses. Feminists also pushed for paid family leave and paid sick days, so those who were on hourly wages could take paid leave to take care of their children and other family members who needed it. Feminists pushing for welfare rights and guaranteed income is also an important thing to remember. It implied that we as a society need to value caretaking and that mothers' caretaking is inherently of value, something that other groups said but never advocated for in a meaningful way. So I do not think that feminism has betrayed women. I think, if anything, society historically has betrayed women, and we are making improvements.
Thank you very much for that opening, and we're going to kick it over to Ashley S., who's also taking the generally no position with regards to tonight's panel or debate topic. Thanks so very much for being with us, Ashley. The floor is all yours.
Hi there. My name is Ashley, aka Not Your Everyday Ashley XOXO. I kind of have a very middle of the ground stance. I guess you would say I'm kind of a liberal conservative, if that makes any kind of sense at all. I would generally take the side that I disagree with, and I guess most people do, toxic modern feminism, third, fourth wave. But I think that if we go back to the actual definition, the original definition of feminism, which is just pushing for equality, I'm definitely there. I would take a strong stance on things like abortion and LGBTQ plus type rights. So that would be my general, probably no stance. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening. And want to let you know, folks, if you had not seen that epic trailer at the very start of the stream, we are thrilled about DebateCon 2, our second debate conference. It's going to be in Plano, Texas on Saturday, November 19th. You don't want to miss it, folks. We've got links to the tickets to see it in person in the description box, and this is going to have huge debates. For example, as you can see at the bottom right of your screen, Destiny and Matt Dillahunty collide, two of our biggest debaters that we've ever had on the channel, as well as we're going to have panels, for example, as you can see below in the bottom right, Ariel Scarcella, Stardust, Mouthy Infidel, and Actual Justice Warrior will be having a panel on the future of America and whether or not it's good. You don't want to miss this one. It's going to be huge. So do check out those links in the description box for this upcoming conference. With that, we're going to kick it over to the generally yes side. Thanks so much for being with us, Catherine. First time here. Glad to have you. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Yeah, generally, yes, would be a good capture of the position. So I might double down a little bit stronger on the yes position for the sake of making this a little more interesting. But, I think that making sure that women have equal rights, equal opportunities is crucial. And I think we've made a great sort of we've done a great job of getting there, but in terms of having choices and having these choices represented and accepted, and regardless of what these choices are, I don't think we're doing such a great job of that, and we're sort of turning back. So, whether women want to choose to work or women want to choose to raise families, I think there has been sort of this encouragement of and making sure that women are working and focusing on their careers and being just like men, or as opposed to women who might want to make a different kind of choice, like having a family, um, and are not feeling supported and are feeling more judged in these situations. So, um, in that way, women's choices are sort of respected only when they are going in specific directions. And so I will argue the yes point, I guess.
You got it. Well, we're glad you're here. And another first timer, thrilled to have you here. Freely Ashley, the floor is all yours for your opening as well.
Thank you so much. So, yes, I believe feminism as it stands today has betrayed women. What was once about equal rights and providing more choices to women has morphed into masculinizing women. Excuse me, I always mess up that word. To make them more like men as opposed to highlighting our own strengths and abilities as women. Feminism is telling women that they are strong, empowered, and independent while simultaneously convincing them that they are also victims. Instead of equality, many feminists openly degrade men and villainize them, creating a culture centered around thinking men are our oppressors instead of our complementary counterparts. And women are told to focus on careers as opposed to family to a very heavy degree, I think. And while at the same time, women who do pursue a more traditional lifestyle are commonly degraded by feminists themselves. Pregnancy and motherhood is also regarded as more of a curse and something that women shouldn't want to endure, as opposed to being presented as one of our greatest strengths and attributes. Women don't want to be objectified by men, but now women are more encouraged than ever to objectify themselves, which still ends up benefiting men in the end and taking away from women. And now gender ideology has also gotten wrapped up in this mix. And I believe this is one of the biggest betrayals because women are now expected to set aside our safety, security, and comfort to make room for biological men in our restrooms, locker rooms, sporting events, and even prisons. And when women make objections and attempt to explain their concerns, they're told to sit down, shut up, and stop being so hateful. So, in my opinion, feminism is no longer about equality or even uplifting women, or at least not uplifting all women. It has been corrupted and become a toxic ideology.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well, Freely Ashley. And want to let you know, folks, maybe you're like, hey, James, this debate conference, I don't live in Texas. I can't fly to Texas. Well, my dear friends, we've got good news. All of the streams are going to be streamed live for the public. This is the first time we're doing it. There are zero paywalls. So it's going to be huge, folks. Another big debate happening. Aaron Ra and Daniel Hakikashu are debating, two monster debaters. It's going to be epic. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button as we have many more juicy debates and panels coming up. And with that, I want to say thank you to our guests, Stardust, Ashley S., Catherine, and Freely Ashley. The floor is all yours for that open dialogue.
Yeah, so I would just say in response to women demonizing men, I don't really agree with people who do that either. The only thing I would say is that I think the internet is pretty misogynistic, and I have no problem with that. I thrive on the internet, but I think I should just have the right to make misandrous jokes too. Like I don't know. This is kind of like my view
What
on
are
things.
those?
If dudes are if misogynistic jokes are allowed to be said and we can all laugh about it, which I think I can laugh about it. How come every time I make a joke that's at men's expense, they have to like lose their cool about it? That's just my. But anyways, um, regarding the trend of women working, I won't disagree with you that that it seems to be encouraged for women to go out seek a career, but I think that's for a specific reason, because financial independence is probably one of the most important things that a woman can have, at least can have for part of her life, before she starts a family, to kind of protect herself, right, and having some expenses put away, because you never know what's going to happen, and you never know if you might have to re-enter the workforce. You never know if your husband is going to become disabled, if he's going to die, if something's going to happen to him, if or even divorce, right? We don't know what's going to happen. So I think it is important for a woman to have practiced financial independence, been in the workforce at least for a little bit. So when something, or if, when or if something happens, they are prepared to take care of themselves and take care of their children. But yeah, I won't disagree with you that, it is kind of glamorized to be like a girl boss, and but we go through these phases through everything, right? Now we're seeing the stay-at-home girlfriend trend pick up on TikTok, so we'll see how far that goes. But yeah, that's kind
The
of like my thought
expectation
on that.
seems to
Yeah.
be that you're either doing both things at the same time. So you're the girl boss and you're also raising kids and you're making a living, or you're just the girl boss at the very least. And I think also socially, like financially, economically, things have changed to the point where it is very difficult for people to sustain and have um, a household where there is a single income household as well. So what you're saying about financial independence, that makes sense as well. But I think also it's not, unless one person is making a significant amount of money, for most people, it becomes almost like an impossibility. Whereas it used to be somewhat possible to have, a house and be able to afford a house and to have kids and have that person stay at home. And our social system isn't really set up
Oh.
to
Mhm.
have that.
Part of that, though, is because we do have to think about when women used to stay at home more frequently. That was unpaid labor still that they used to do, right? That's still labor that they were doing all the time. It's not like you're staying at home and not working. You are working, but it was just labor that was undervalued and was never paid. And oftentimes women who had the ability to stay home actually had hired help, right? They had hired help to help them with housework or help with this or that, right? So it's not that I understand what you're saying about how feasible is it for you to have a single income and have somebody who can stay at home and watch the kids and really participate in that job full time. Um, I do think that it is. I think it's doable if somebody really does want to do it. But I think that um, people are not expecting. There are going to be sacrifices that you make, no matter what choice you make, right? So you're going to have to sacrifice something if you choose to stay at home and make that your full time job, or if you choose to go out into the workforce and work have domestic duties be secondary, right? But on average, still women, even who do work, on average spend more time per week doing domestic work than their male counterparts, and will on average take off more time for their children. So it's not like things have changed a whole lot, right? And again, I would still point to historically and globally, women have always worked, and women have make up something
Just to
like
be
in
sure,
agriculture. Sorry,
just to be sure, I want
yeah.
to give you maybe 20 more seconds, and then
Oh,
just
sorry.
no
Yeah,
problem.
didn't mean to ramble. Yeah, I mean, a great example is agriculture globally. Women make up a huge part of that workforce, and historically always have. But only their labor was never counted as their own; it was counted as their husband's labor.
But I think we are often trying to equalize, and say, okay, we as women, we have to, you mentioned women do these household chores and things like that. But it's like we don't have to contribute in the exact same way because, for example, I don't know how to fix a toilet leak. I just don't. Some women do know how to fix a toilet leak, and
Mhm.
that's awesome. I wish I could. I'm not good at that stuff. Some men are great at that stuff, and I'll call them. And so I think it's more important to sort of focus on like people contributing more equally maybe not in the same way, but contributing equally to the relationship. And then on top of it, I think it's more like ultimately it's between the two people and what they decide in their relationship is important for them. Because for me, I'm not like, I'm more career focused personally. I'm not so family focused myself. But I don't think it's fair for us to kind of judge people. And I think socially it's become sort of unacceptable not to have that perfect career, that perfect household, and there's that judgment as opposed to like letting people do what they want, which I think true sort of feminism should be about, allowing people choices and allowing people, women, equality of that opportunity. And then, women do what they can with it.
So I think I
Yeah.
agree with you. I agree with you.
I have a question, please.
Oh, sorry.
Can we define what feminism means to us all? What does it mean to you, Stardust, Catherine, and Freely? What does feminism mean to you?
Well, so I think that there are a lot of different flavors of feminism, and you can just see this like with just the different
Today in
beliefs that
2020.
yeah, you can just see that how different even today in 2022, you can still see that feminism has so many different flavors of it that there are feminists who will like vehemently disagree with each other and will point at each other and be like, that's not the real feminist, I'm the real feminist, right? So I think for me, I think just fundamentally when I think about feminism, I think about how did feminism start? And feminism to me started with actually valuing the work, the unpaid and undervalued work that women did, whether that was at home or whether that was contributing to their husband's labor, um, uh, uh, um, advocating for family rights, family leave, advocating for an income for women who stayed at home, though it never came to fruition quite the way that we wanted. These are things where feminism actually was pro family, and still
Was.
is. Yeah. It's in my thoughts, I think that feminism still
I'm
is
so sorry
pro
that I
family.
meant more so.
Yeah.
just- I agree with everything you said,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you're still talking about it in past tense. I'm talking, what do you think now? When you hear someone call themselves a feminist, what is the
Well,
first thing that pops in
yeah.
your head?
So I think of like like Twitter, like loud Twitter obnoxious people, right? But I think 61% of women identify as feminists in America, and I think a large portion of that 61% probably doesn't identify with the person who's losing their mind on Twitter.
Fair
Because
enough.
Twitter
Feel
makes
like
up
that
2%
staying
of like the population of everybody, so yeah.
Do you feel like we're staying stable, or do you feel like more people are gradually or maybe rapidly going towards one side or the other, wanting to associate as a feminist and wanting not to? Maybe.
I think when you get people on Twitter who are acting like lunatics, then I think people are not going to want to be associated with feminism, and I don't blame anybody for that. I look at people like that and I think they're crazy. So
So maybe
uh,
perhaps social media is playing a huge role in what you
yeah,
maybe you
it's like
believe.
I personally think it's a small minority of people who make us look like lunatics.
Mm.
And I think on average, I think the average feminist person who identifies as a feminist is probably not identifying with the blue-haired screaming SJW, right? Um,
I think that personally, I'm surrounded by several people that kind of are like that. So
mm,
I might disagree with you. I think that that's anecdotal.
yeah,
For me anecdotally, I am surrounded by that kind of stuff, and it kind of
yeah,
drives me crazy. But
So am I.
it's kind of more turned me off of feminism.
yeah.
So that's been a huge factor in my life, which is kind of why I ask, because I'm interested to see what everyone's unique experience with that is. My unique experience is the blue-haired screaming radical feminist in my family, in my friend circle, at work. I'm surrounded by this, so
I think
I go ahead.
I think feminism has completely changed. Like I think the feminism of 2022, like to me, feminism, and really I tend to prefer the word humanism when I describe myself, is really because I believe in the equality of opportunity for people, that everyone should have that equality of opportunity, not outcome, but of opportunity. And historically, uh, women and other groups haven't always had that, and it's important to figure out ways and how to change structures so that we
Yeah.
do have that.
I
But
feel
the way,
embarrassed now to call myself a feminist.
yeah,
I do.
I mean,
It embarrasses
Yeah,
not to
I
do.
personally, I refuse to let other people run away with the label. I think I grew up with, my mom was a feminist, always like raised me with feminist ideals, things like that. But it wasn't like the type of person, she was never the type of person to get offended over tiny things, you know.
I don't
Same
think
thing with
it's right.
most of my friends, you know, most of my friends were feminists, but like when it came to things that people freak out about on Twitter, it's like, really, do you really care about that? There are bigger things in the world right
but
now.
it's
So
not just Twitter,
yeah.
and this is the
Yeah, I don't
problem
even have a
because,
Twitter, so I don't know what you're talking about
well, I
personally.
think it's
I don't
institutions.
so honestly.
Yeah,
I'm
because
sorry.
to me the troubling part is the institutions, because what I'm seeing is what sort of this new wave of feminism has become is this idea of and this is what freely Ashley has kind of alluded to, is this kind of a victimhood status, or this status of like wanting these extra privileges or rights. And that has really bothered me, because it creates these like inequalities that you know, because everything to me, feminism is really about equality, at least equality of opportunity. And to me, this kind of new breed creates inequalities. It breeds resentment. It creates tension between men and other groups, and it also breeds sort of this insecurity amongst women. Because if, for example, if you're hiring women, and you're hiring women as a quota, and you're saying, well, let's hire X number of women because we want to increase the number of women on our staff, and you're not hiring them based on just merit, right? You might have hired actually like an excellent candidate who happens to be a woman, but that candidate now doesn't know if you've hired that person based on their, you know, brilliance and their ability and their skill, or you hired them based on the fact that they, you know, have,
Yeah.
you know, they're a woman,
Well,
their
Well,
identity.
Well, let's hear
exactly,
from
and it
Ashley.
should.
We haven't heard from Ashley. I should say freely Ashley. From her, it looks like you
Um,
have something to say freely Ashley.
yeah. So yeah, and the problem with that too is, you know, you need to hire the best candidate for the job in that example. And if it's a woman, great, but it might not be. And just the fact that if a company is having to fill a quota, you're going to get people in there who aren't going to be able to do the job to the capacity that maybe somebody else would. And that's just regardless of gender. That's just capability and drive and all of that. And I think there's this push, this heavy push to get women up into these like higher levels, you know, like CEO status, when a lot of women don't want all of the responsibility that comes with that. It comes with a lot of stress and responsibility. You're working crazy hours. Your entire life is devoted to your job. Many women just don't want that. And I think feminism should be about solely choice. And we shouldn't be encouraging something to the detriment of something else. You know, we shouldn't be pushing career over family orientation. We shouldn't be. I think that there is this idea that, you know, we should tell women that their career is what fulfills them in life, when I don't think that's the case at all. I think your personal life, your family life, your relationships are what is truly fulfilling, and your career is something that, like, obviously you need. I do think women should be in the workplace. I'm a stay-at-home mom and I work freelance, so I have 2 different freelance jobs that I also do, which is stressful and a juggle and all of that. And I do have to make sacrifices. Like Stardust said, everybody has sacrifices, obviously. And but to me, that's more worth it. That I get to be home with my kids, and I get to contribute to my household. And, you know, sorry, I'm trying to kind of touch on a lot of points that I heard brought up. But and when it comes to like domestic duties and all of that, I really liked what Catherine said, where there's this balance, and there should be a balance between men and women within their household, because, like she said, you know, like my husband's a mechanic, and he does all of the lawn care, he does all of, you know, he fixes all of our cars, and he does all of that sort of stuff that I could never do, and I don't want to do. I'm not interested in learning how to change a tire. I really am not. I would much rather have him be able to do those types of things that require more strength and all of that I just don't have the capabilities of. And so I think that's what's really important is we complement one another. Women don't have to do all of one thing and men don't have to do all of the other. Like my husband does dishes and he cleans. I think we have a much more modernized version of the like gender roles, I guess you would say, but we still have certain gender roles within our household.
So,
What
the
girl?
first thing I'm gonna say
Um,
is that I
I was
don't
curious.
think that the trend of women trying to be girl bosses has anything to do with feminism. I think we want to tie that to feminism, but I don't think it is. Like, just like any trend within women is not necessarily tied to feminism just because feminism advocated for women's rights to be able to work and be able to be mobile within society, right? Just because feminism advocated for us to have that mobility doesn't mean that it being a girl boss, being in, is necessarily tied to feminism. I think that's just another social trend. Just
What do
like
you
there are
think
tons of
tied to?
social trends, just like there are tons of social trends that are picked up by women and spread by women. Do we think that inherently like the supermodel physique from the 90s was inherently a feminist thing? I don't think so. It was just something that was a trend amongst women. The second thing I would say, actually, I don't know where I forgot what my second point was, so never mind.
I had well to piggyback off what you said, but I actually do want to hear more from Stardust. What do you think it's tied to? If you don't think that that's
I
tied
think it's
to
just
women,
another
the
social
girl boss
trend.
movement. What
I
would
think it's
that be
just
tied?
I think it's just another social trend, just like any other social trend.
Well, being a girl
Any
boss,
other
I mean,
social
I don't
trends?
think
Are there
there's
subcategories?
anything. Sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. Like, I get a social trend. That's just an umbrella term, but you don't see any association with it whatsoever with
I mean,
modern
I think
feminism.
people want to tie it to, to feminism, and people like to feel empowered, sure, but I don't think it's inherently tied to feminism.
Well,
I
I
think
think
I, I would
feminism
disagree.
feminism, if
has
I were
an
going to
expectation of being successful, right? And I
if
think girl boss is part of that. But I
I
think
don't think
men have the
feminism
same
has to do
pressure.
with being successful. I think feminism is inherently talking about how women have been through like a historical lens. Women have historically kind of been put in a secondary status to as opposed to their male counterparts historically.
I don't think it's
And
relevant
and
anymore. It's
wait a
not
minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm not finished. So women have historically been in a secondary position to men, and feminism's kind of goal was to maybe take women out of that secondary status and allow women the mobility that men have to go where they feel like they want to go, but not push people in a certain way. I don't think women should be forced to work if they don't want to work. I don't think women should be forced to not have kids if they want to have kids. I think having kids is great. Um, yeah.
But that's the traditional. But that's the purest definition of feminism. That's sort of the
But that's
feminism
the fundamental
that
part of
that is
feminism
the
is
but
that
that's not
women are
what
the
it
fundamental.
is
secondary
anymore.
status
That's
Just
not what
Well,
in
the
just to be
comparison
sure
to
the
there's
men.
not
prop
too much interrupting. Okay, we'll give you a chance to finish Stardust, and then we'll kick it right over to, I think it was Catherine, you were responding, and then we'll come over to you, Ashley. I think one of the things that if it sounds like Ashley's interrupting, it's just because her Zoom is on, it's like a 1 or 2 second delay. So Ashley S is not interrupting. She's just, it's because it's delayed. Sometimes she's jumping in when somebody else has already started talking. So go ahead, Stardust, and then we'll kick over to Catherine, and then Ashley S, and then Ashley Freely Ashley.
Yeah. So again, I would say that um, these other things that we're tacking on, that sure there are different flavors of feminism, but fundamentally, when we talk about feminism, we're talking about looking at how women's mobility has been restricted historically because of how they are viewed in comparison to their male counterparts. I think that women should have that mobility, and I think that is a fundamental part. Honestly, it is the fundamental part of feminism itself. Now, all these other things that are coming with all these different waves of feminism, we can have our critiques of them. I certainly have my critiques. I think that feminism itself is still that fundamental part. It is still that fundamental definition where we're looking at wanting to increase women's ability to be have mobility and go where they want to go.
Let's kick it. All right, Catherine.
Yeah. So I don't think we disagree on that, because I
Mhm.
think if we're looking at the classic sort of definition of feminism and the goals of that, I doubt that anybody on this panel really would disagree with that, and the desire of allowing women to make these choices, right? Whether it's being a mother or it's being having a career. Like me and Freely Ashley have probably very different things that we want out of life. Like I do value career. I'm very ambitious, and that brings a very specific value to my life. And Freely Ashley might have a different thing that brings value to her life, which is maybe a combination of family and career. And so I think you're right, it's about mobility and choice. But I think in terms of the topic today, it's like what is it turning into? Because I don't think the things that women are chasing today and they're calling it feminism are necessarily the same things that women were fighting for back in the day, which was like the classic definition of feminism. Because in the classic definition of feminism, I'm 100% a feminist. But in today's, what people are asking for today, I see a lot of problems with that. And it sounds like you have criticisms of that as well.
I do.
Ashley, yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. I just have so much to unpack here. Basically, I agree with a lot of what Stardust says, but I disagree with most of what she says, and I hate that. I'm so sorry. I don't want this to be like a gang up on Stardust.
It's all good.
Oh, thank you. I just have to say how I really feel, though. Is like I think that feminism no longer exists. I don't think that women want equality. I think they want fucking superiority, and I think this is bullshit. I don't think that we can sit here and say feminism as the 1960s definition. That's just not what it is. And I agree exactly, Catherine, with what you said. You're very correct where you say that inherently or at the core of what feminism was originally intended to be, and the same thing you said, Stardust. I agree with you. All I don't think any of us would. I kind of like what you say, Catherine, about humanism. Just being being all about humanity. But I just think that we're dancing around the subject, or just it's bullshit to say that modern feminism. What does feminism mean to you? Well, yeah, it should mean what it meant in 1960, but that's not what it means anymore. Now, and again, I say it has become the radical screaming, wearing a vagina hat, marching around with your tits hanging out, screaming at men, just hating on everybody and feeling like you're superior. There's trends going on with dating. Women are having guys come take them out. They're having them pay for them, their friends, their family. They're on OnlyFans making that fucking money. This is just bullshit. I respect it. Stardust, I'm sorry, but
No,
it's
it's
just
fine.
very
It's
hard.
fine. So I
I-
want to say that I think that again we're doing this thing where we are tying social trends to a movement where they are not necessarily tied to that movement. And
I just
well, I
Okay.
think wait a minute. I think as a whole we can look at like uh at feminism and we can look at like these specific people that we're talking about, but on a global scale again there's still feminism as it was in the 60s and 70s on a global scale is still very relevant. There are still women who go to the farm in other countries. There are still women who go to the farms in India with their husbands, and their labor on that farm still does not get counted as part of their own labor. That labor is counted as their husband's labor. The feminism as its original definition is still very relevant today, and it's still relevant maybe not in the same way with rights and with legality in the Western world, but from a social aspect 100%. I think there are still ways that women are demonized socially, just like there are ways that men are demonized socially, and I think that like part of feminism also was to help liberate men too from the things that were restricting them. So I don't disagree with you that I have problems with people taking advantage of anybody when it comes to dating, right? I think that's not feminism. I think it's just you being a scumbag, right? If you're taking advantage of a guy who's taking you out, taking you to dinner, and getting him to pay for all of your friends, you're not being a feminist. You're being a scumbag.
Let's kick it over to Ashley. Also give you a chance to respond. I know that you have a burning response, but I do want to give Freely Ashley a chance in case you had anything you wanted to add or we haven't heard from you for a while. Freely Ashley.
Yeah, I think it does a disservice to like our society to ignore the glaring obviousness that feminism isn't what Stardust is, you know, the roots of feminism is what she's describing, and it's not that anymore. It is, in my opinion, quite radical. It is all about basically propelling women upwards without wanting to really do the work behind it in a lot of cases, and without wanting to make a lot of sacrifices. And it's not, there's a lot of intersectionality within feminism, and I don't think you can call certain parts of this like, oh, this is just a social trend. No, this is a perhaps a social trend, yes, but it is propelled forward under the guise of feminism and by people who call themselves feminists. And it's not inclusive to women like me, like pro-life women. I am demonized all the time. I'm constantly told how I hate women because I'm pro-life, when in actuality I want to support women and let them know that they're capable and do whatever I can in order to support those women. And I think that's
Ashley
a
S. Go ahead. Give you a chance to finish.
Thanks.
oh, I did.
But if
Were
you
you
had anything
talking
else,
to me? I'm sorry.
I was going to say I was going to kick it over to you, Ashley S. But freely, Ashley, in case you had anything, I didn't want to interrupt you too early. If
Nope,
you had
you're
anything
fine.
more, okay.
No, you're
Ashley
fine.
S. Go for it. Let it rip.
I can understand exactly what Stardust is saying, but I think it feels like a form of word salad. I think that to say that it's like, well, socially this and socially that, are we getting the Webster's dictionary out here? I think if we're being realistic with each other and we're talking about what's actually, well, I think so. If we're talking about what's actually going on right now and today and what this topic is actually about, I think that you could use an umbrella statement to say that everything is a social construct or that everybody puts a spin on this or on that. There's no actual definition of what this is or what this is, I think, in the context of this debate. I think the whole reason that people are here talking about it or debating it is because it is not obviously what it is intended to be. Because if it was, we wouldn't be fucking talking about it right now. That was the end of what I wanted to say.
I think
I
we have
will
a
add
very
one.
go ahead.
Sorry, Stardust. I will actually go a little bit to Stardust's side on this. And that is, you pointed out that there are places around the world where women do not have these rights yet. And that, I think, that is something that is often missing from the conversation in general. And I think that's something that in a lot of conversations about different kinds of rights, including, say, LGBTQ and all that kind of stuff too, I think, in North America, I think we're not perfect, but we're doing a lot better constantly. And a lot of these organizations that sort of exist, and including, let's say, with feminism, like, I'm surprised that a lot of these organizations don't go into these other countries where and try to sort of help support the women who are actually struggling, because there's a lot of issues that are, by the old definition of feminism, are affected. And so, and in terms of, in sort of North America, I mean, it's not like we've solved everything. I mean, with CEO positions and things like that, yes, there are women who do not want to be CEOs, or maybe, they have families and so they miss out on that, or maybe they want to run charities and things like that. So it's a different temperament, but there are women who do, and they don't always get to, to sort of be promoted. There are sort of clubs and connections and things like that that have formed over many years. And if you don't golf with the right guys, you kind of don't get into that and you don't get promoted. So there are issues, and those are complex and nuanced. And how do you solve that? But again, it sort of comes back to me to that equality of opportunity. How do you establish that equality of opportunity? I'll throw it back to you, Stardust.
Yeah, so I guess I want to start off by saying, a lot of things were said in the past, however many minutes it's been, but I think I want to kind of hone in on a certain area. It seems like we are picking apart, we're picking certain things that women do that we don't like and attributing it to feminism. So, for example, Ashley brought up the example of somebody getting a man to pay for them and their friends when they go out on a date or something like that. How is that in any way related to feminism? How is that feminism? If anything,
Okay,
I'd
I'm
say it's the
sorry. Are you
opposite.
actually
But
wanting an answer? I didn't know
yeah,
if you. I honestly didn't know. How is that related? I think that it's related because I think that it's a movement. How was anything related to feminism back when we were
how is that
ladies?
specific example related
Can
to
I answer you?
feminism?
Just hear from Ashley. Yes.
I'm trying to answer you because I think that what feminism has been warped into, and let's be very clear that we're talking about North America again. I'm specifically talking about the United States of America, and anecdotally, my experiences, right? I think that for us, how that's twisted is that it's become an attitude. It's become, like you said, you want to say that it's socially, it's some kind of social movement rather than you want to say that it's actually feminism. And that's why I brought up the thing about, are we, yes, I was being sarcastic, but are we looking at the Webster's dictionary definition of what feminism is? And the reason I say that, Stardust, is because I do not believe that socially, which is one of the most important things as human beings, right? Everything is social. Everything is our experience around us in the world. And what most of us in my little version here of the United States of America are seeing, what I'm personally seeing, is that this new wave of feminism is not the true definition of what it
You
used
still
to
haven't answered
be.
my question.
That is why I don't. I'm just like you. I can be a little long-winded sometimes. Stand by. I think that it's not. I think that what it has to do with now is that it's changing this new wave of feminists into man haters. I do. I think that it is changing a lot of women into what I said earlier, which
But
is
that
they want
specific
superiority
example,
I can answer
they
that.
want
yeah, the
because they
specific
want
example that
superiority.
you brought up, how is
I'm
that related to
not getting
feminism?
there
You're
because
not
they
getting
want.
there. You're not getting there at all. What are you
Well,
talking
the
I'm
about?
sorry,
women,
you're the
the
only
way
one
that
that's
the
allowed to
women
talk for 5
justify
minutes.
it, the way
Continue.
that the women
I'll just
justify
fucking
it
sit here and be pretty.
is that we've got to take, it's like we got to take hours. That's kind of how they talk about it, right?
Okay,
That's
but
the way I've seen it.
wouldn't feminists I would push back on that. I wouldn't feminists say that, it's not necessarily the man's responsibility to pay for a woman.
Real
That a
feminist
lot of
would,
women
a
would
real
push
feminist would say
back
we
on
should
that.
split the bill, right?
Yeah, real feminists or whatever you want to call them. That's why I wouldn't call that a woman getting a man to pay for her and her friends necessarily something that's a result of feminism. I'm sorry, I just don't see it.
The reason it's a
If
result of
anything, I would say that that's more traditional. That's more trad based. That's more trad thinking, if anything.
Let's kick it over to Ashley S
Okay.
first chance, and then we'll go to Freely Ashley. So Ashley S will give you a quick response, and then
I'll wrap
Freely
it up.
Ashley.
The reason
Also,
that
if you want to take this only to North
Hold on,
America,
we're
that's
not
fine. But
Ashley
yeah.
S.
I think, that's why I wanted us to all define kind of what we were getting at in the first place. Because in my mind, coming into this debate, I'm speaking about my opinion on feminism, and I'm speaking of that opinion anecdotally. I live in the United States of America. I'm sorry, let me address the actual question you wanted me to get to the point of. The point is that it's an attitude, just like you said, a social movement. I agree with you on that, but I don't.
Social
I don't
trend,
think
not a
that-
movement.
Okay, well, then I disagree with you on that. I think it's a social movement. So, this new social movement, this new wave of feminism, I think is affecting the attitudes of most women. Who are the most women that are out there dating and going on these dating apps? And the stories that I was referring to, they're between the ages of 18 and 25, and they are part of this social movement, this new third, fourth wave of feminism, in my humble opinion. And that's how it is completely relatable. It's an attitude of superiority. Men aren't shit. Money, money, money. I'm going to get what I want out of them. And there's no fucking repercussions because pussy rules the world.
That has nothing to do with
That's
feminism.
why
That's
it's
just
relatable.
entitled
hear-
young people
I just
thinking they're
want to be
entitled
sure
to
that we hear
anything.
from Freely
definitely.
Ashley as well. Freely Ashley.
Well,
what do you
okay,
got?
men think they're entitled to pussy
Hold
all
on,
the
you're
time.
not
Does that
Freely
mean
Ashley.
it's like anti-feminism? No.
Well, so what? So what? But okay, so there's women have, and I agree with Ashley, where women are adopting this air of superiority, so they expect men to specifically cater to them at all times. The man has to go along with whatever they say, or else it's it's a hit the highway type of thing. Like if anything comes up, then the woman is
That's
like, well, you're not
entitled
worthy,
youth.
and well, okay, but it has been created in part by corrupted feminism, and you have to acknolledge that. You just you really do.
I don't
Because
know.
there's such
can
a
be fueled
negative
by-
air that feminists have, and it's a constant. You have to go along with us or you're against us. It doesn't even matter if you're actually a woman too. Like I said, it's this entitlement that is running feminism into the ground and
I guess
destroying it. And
yeah,
I mean, you can't hold
I
on
would
to
ask a
your
couple of
pure
things.
definition, right?
So
Like
one thing,
We
definition
can do a quick
changes.
response, Stardust, and then I'm
yeah,
going to go over to Catherine, and then we've got to go to a question that we got pulled from the audience. So go ahead,
one thing I
Stardust, and
would
then we'll go to
say,
Catherine.
yeah, one thing I would say in response to that is that in some parts, some people may justify those actions with feminism, but that is not something that's inherently tied to feminism. I think that's entitled people who are young who think they're entitled to things. Men do the same thing when they're young and they're arrogant. They think that they're entitled to a woman's body just because of whatever, right? Same sort of thing. Men and women both do it. We're both susceptible to the arrogance of youth. And I don't think that it's accurate to paint that as something that's inherently tied to feminism. What I would say is that, if
Gotta make it
anything,
quick.
sorry, I'll just end there.
We'll kick it over to Catherine, and then we got to go to that polled question as the audience has voted. Folks, we have a new feature where we basically poll the audience on what topic they most want to hear our guests discuss before the Q&A. But go ahead, Catherine, before we get to that.
All right. Well, I think what's happening in general is that we have this corruption of language and we have this corruption of ideology. And one of these words is just like liberalism is sort of corrupted as a word. I find that feminism is, and so I feel, Stardust, that you're holding on to this purest definition of feminism, which is great. I mean, I'd love to hold on to it too, but the reality is, for most people today, for especially this new generation, the ideology of it has shifted and I think it is important to sort of recognize culture. You're holding on to this purest definition, and we can't really have a full conversation about it because that's not how people are behaving now, and it's
Just
not
because people
what
are tacking things
Well, I want to
onto
give
it, though,
Catherine a
doesn't
chance to
mean that it
finish.
makes it accurate,
But
right?
these systems are changing, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
but what? Okay, what
how is it being
organization? What
implemented?
system? What organization? What laws? Who has come out and said that men should always pay for women in these social situations?
For
Whoever
example, quota
that's irrelevant.
systems are
Yeah, but
clear
quotas have nothing to do
example.
with somebody on a date being an asshole,
No,
right?
but for example, quota systems, right, in institutions where women, for example, get hired, we have to have this number of women for this job, right? So literally affirmative action for women. That is an example of an institutionalized way of approaching,
Gotta
which
jump.
is different, right?
I've got to jump into this. Basically, it's a new feature, folks. If you didn't get to vote on the poll, we usually put this in the live chat early in the debate. Wanted to ask the audience what subtopic they most wanted to hear discussed tonight. The topics or the questions, the subtopics that they had to choose from were: one, whether or not there's a double standard in dating in terms of the amount of partners that you've had sex with, as well as divorced women, double standards compared to divorced men, and whether or not OnlyFans empowers women. And that was actually the winner. So, whether or not OnlyFans empowers women or the feminist movement, would love to hear from all of you. We'll start with Freely Ashley.
Alrighty. I do not think that OnlyFans empowers women. I think it hurts women above all else. It also, not only does it, you're self objectifying yourself. Women for so long have been said, I'm not an object for you to gawk at, and now they're making themselves an object to gawk at. And the premise is that they will benefit monetarily, but even if you're benefiting monetarily, are you actually benefiting as a person? Are you enriching your life with OnlyFans? Are you, learning any actual skills? In my opinion, no. Perhaps you could make the argument marketing, but I don't really think so. I think it's fairly easy to go on OnlyFans and partake in those activities. But it also leaves a huge door open for more exploitation because just of bad people doing bad things. And there's a really big problem with sex trafficking, and I would imagine that there are probably girls who are on OnlyFans who are not there willingly. I think there's also a lot of pressure from boyfriends, from spouses, to have this easy moneymaker as well.
We'll kick it over to Stardust.
Yeah, so I think I diverge with a lot of my peers on this. I think that porn and I think sex work in general is inherently like super exploitative, super dangerous and very harmful to a lot of women. And I think it doesn't mean that I don't think there could be a future in which sex work could be practiced by people who are engaging in it in a healthy way. I just think when we reach that future where the only people who are engaging in sex work are people who are engaging it fully of their own choosing and fully in a healthy way, the amount of people engaging in sex work would be astronomically low. It would be such a small group of people that would be doing it. But right now I think a lot of people are either coerced or forced into sex work. A lot of people are pressured into it, and I don't think that's healthy, and I don't think it's good for people. You'll even see ex porn stars who come out from the industry and talk about how horrible the industry was to them. So
Ashley S., whether or not OnlyFans empowers women, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so contrary to what I said earlier, was OnlyFans make that money, girl. I am not all about. I preface what I'm about to say with this. I'm not all about women taking advantage and having that mindset of men are nothing but a wallet to me. However, I'm pro sex work. I'm pro all of it. I think that anybody should have the right to do what they want. I agree. Yes, that there are. I know that it's complicated. It's very complicated, but I've debated on this topic before, and my stance is it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's not going anywhere. I think that if we legalize it and we let people choose to do it, just like with legalizing marijuana, just like after prohibition with legalizing alcohol again, like it's going to, in my opinion, overall, it's going to be safer, and we're going to be able to control it better and keep people more safe than we could otherwise. Just like making anything black market or underground basically just makes it more dangerous for those people, because just like making abortion illegal makes it more dangerous for those women that are going to go ahead and get one anyways, back alley abortions. I think that I know it's off topic, but in my opinion, that kind of goes hand in hand. So pro sex work, if you want to get on there and shake your titties, girl, get it.
Catherine, what do you think? Has OnlyFans empowered women?
Yeah, I am more aligned with Ashley XOXO on this for very similar reasons as she's mentioned. But I also would say it also depends on the person and the personal impact that it has on them. Some people can handle it just fine, and some people it has a strong emotional toll on them. And but I think on the positive side, it might stop them from doing more dangerous sex work, going on the streets or seeing clients in person. So it might actually make them more safe. And it also depends to me if they're doing it on their own free will and their own free choice, or they're being coerced, by their boyfriends or other people. So it sort of depends. But if they can be kept more safe that way, and it's a free choice, and I think it's better than the alternative of banning it and having it go underground.
So
You
if
got
I
it.
can just add, I tend to agree with you guys on what you're saying about I think legalization is the way to go with it. Even if I socially think that most people, and we know by data globally that most people are either coerced or forced into it. But I would say that something is that I found really interesting is Ashley, you were just critiquing the girl boss mentality and associating that with feminism, and now you're totally fine with like go out there, get out there, shake your titties. So aren't you part of the problem?
I think you missed the what I prefaced what I said with. Yeah, so what I prefaced it with was, even though, just like you just said, but I said it in my own way, that maybe socially or personally on a personal level,
You're
I'm
still
not going to go
contributing to
out there and
that girl boss mentality.
I disagree with you. I don't think I am. I think that I'm a very sarcastic person when I said, get it, girl, go out there and shake them titties. What I'm saying is, I believe in freedom of choice. I am also pro choice. Does that make me not feminist?
No, I mean,
Does that make
I'm
me
just
not,
saying
you know what I'm saying?
I think it's
That's
one thing to
semantics.
have
And
yeah, you can
I
have a
think,
critique of the girl boss mentality and still, but I think you say it's sarcastic, but you're saying that, go out there, shake your titties, whatever, get that money, which is fine. But then how much can you really critique the girl boss mentality if you can't hold yourself to the same standards that you hold other people to?
okay. I want to do something a little different here, and I might be completely wrong with this. I can't obviously talk to the audience or James because he's neutral. Freely, Ashley, and Catherine, did you understand what I meant by what I said when I kind of prefaced it the way I said it, even if you might not socially agree with it? And it's
Just
okay
like
if you don't agree
appealing
with it.
to, yeah, okay.
I took it as a jokey thing.
I love
when
it.
You said shake
I love
your. I mean, like I personally don't think that, for example, that it's like necessarily a healthy, wonderful thing as a job, but that's not my choice to make, right? So and it's safer, and so I leave it to other people to make that choice. And same with the girl boss. You do what you want to do. I don't even think being a girl boss is bad. So
being a girl boss is bad, but I think that I think it's just the overall attitude that is coming
yeah.
with it. I'm not the one that even brought up girl boss, so I don't
I mean,
know.
there's boy bosses too. So
We've got another
I mean,
question.
I think okay.
This was it. Freely, go ahead. Freely, Ashley will give you. We haven't heard from you much. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the girl boss mentality in and of itself is kind of harmful. It like trivializes the accomplishments and progress that women actually make. To call a strong woman who is really successful and high powered a girl boss, I find that diminishing and demeaning personally. And I don't think it should like if she is a CEO, she's not a girl boss, she's the CEO. You know, it should be equal. Like I've never heard the term boy boss, and I think that's
see what you're
demeaning as
saying.
well. Yeah.
I agree with you. That's why I think that attributing girl boss mentality to feminism is kind of I don't know. I feel like it's cheapening feminism. I don't really like that attribution. So
Again, I'm not the one that brought that up.
We'll jump.
If
to
a
the
person
next
calls
question.
themselves that versus like other people
yeah.
calling
I
it
just
that.
don't associate girl boss mentality with feminism. I just don't see how.
And I don't associate 1960s definition of feminism with 2022's definition.
Okay,
It's
you
not
don't. If you don't think that
what
it's
choice
still,
would
if you don't
be.
think that
No,
that's
let's move to the
that
next topic.
original definition
This
is
is the
still
second
not
question.
relevant, then that's fine. But then that would
This is the
expose you
second
to having a
question.
very skewed view, right? So
It's not
Sure.
her
We're going
view.
to the next question. Go ahead. I'll give you a chance to respond, Catherine or Ashley. Really short and pithy because
I think
help herself.
It's okay. We can move on.
Next one. This one is from our polled audience questions. Thanks, everybody in the audience. Want to remind you, our guests are linked in the description. You can hear more of their views, including Stardust, Ashley S., Catherine, and Freely Ashley. If you want to hear more, click on their links below. What are you waiting for, folks? This one coming in from, was that a hand? Did you want to say something, Freely Ashley, or was it a stretch?
Oh, it was a hair thing.
This one coming in, they basically the second most voted topic was whether or not there's a double standard in dating. In particular, the amount of sex partners that someone has. Is there a double standard based on sex, or alternatively, as some have argued, is it that people aren't discriminating? In other words, they're not being unfair to women in virtue of them being women and being sexually active, but more they're discriminating based on who people are having sex with, namely because men are pretty easy to have sex with, but women are much more picky. And so some people might argue that it's not that they're picking on women for being sexually active, it's that they're picking on women for being sexually active with men who are so easy. It's kind of like dragging your tongue on the railing on the escalator at the airport. It's kind of like, ugh. But women are,
considered
much
that
more difficult.
perspective. Wow.
Huh?
I said I haven't considered that perspective. That's interesting. Okay.
Some have argued, though, that women, by contrast, are much more difficult to get like in bed, and so that's why men are more admired for having so many more sexual partners.
Well,
What are your thoughts?
I actually think encouraging women to have hookups more, to have casual sex more, to treat sex as if it is truly meaningless and it's an arbitrary thing. I think that is benefiting men in that our strength in that area is our pickiness. And, I'm not one for purity culture by any means, but I think that everyone should be much more selective with who they are partaking in that activity with. It comes with a lot of responsibilities, not only just on an emotional level for women, whereas men don't typically have that strong emotional connection, but women do. It's a bonding experience, and not only that, it can create a whole nother human being, and that's a huge responsibility to partake in as well. So I don't think that anyone should be having as much casual, indiscriminate sex and one night stands and hookups just as a standard of I don't know, I guess like worth of yourself and your body, and trying to reserve that for somebody who is worthy of it.
So I think that while I think anybody should have the choice to do whatever they want. I do sort of tend to agree that in general, I think it doesn't serve us so much to have sort of indiscriminate, casual, to treat it in this kind of casual way. However, I do think there is a double standard, although there was an interesting point that was made that you read out, so that I haven't considered. But I do think there is a double standard because I don't think that point is generally considered. I thought that was a thoughtful point, but I don't think most people consider it. I think, and when somebody like Andrew Tate or somebody like that talks about it, he's totally fine with having, whatever 400 plus women hookups, and he does not value women who would have had similar numbers or even dramatically smaller numbers. I do think that's an absolute double standard. That said, I think socially it makes sense to have, as a feminist or as a humanist, I think everyone should have ideally values where people should seek to have better connection, better bonds, and it would probably serve them better sexually as well. But it is their choice.
Thank you very much. And Ashley S., what are your thoughts?
I agree that double standards exist. I don't agree that they happen for a reason. I think that that's just a load of horse shit. I don't think it's okay. I just have to address, and I like you freely. I like a lot of things, but I did watch your content. I disagree with you on a lot of things too. I think that pair bonding is a load of fucking horse shit. That is just not true. That's not true. Oxytocin levels, women bond and men don't. Vomit. What you said alludes to pair bonding, in my opinion. And I'll say this, and then obviously you can say your thing too. But what you said is that women tend to bond more so than men do. I mean, those were your words. I heard them, which has triggered the vomit response.
This is the question.
So the double standards. I think that men believe that women that have a lot of sex with a lot of men are unable. This is a huge part of why there's such a stigma on women having more sex with men than men having more sex with women. I think that using the thing that, women can just have sex with anyone. He can go out in the back alley, right? The 500-pound lady can go out in the back alley, bend over, and 10 guys from the bar will go fuck her freely. Like that whole thing, that's kind of true, right? That's based. I get what he's saying with that. But I don't think that means that if that overweight woman that's bending over in the alley were to fall in love with somebody, that should be unable to connect with them. And I think that this is something that men who don't like, or they can't cope with, or their insecurity doesn't allow them to deal with the fact that a woman has had many sexual partners. I think that that's something that they use and that they say, and I think that that's harmful and irrelevant and incorrect information. And scientifically, the oxytocin level pair bonding thing is just such horseshit. And I'm not saying you used the word pair bonding, but you did say that, and that's how it relates. I'm done.
Stardust, I don't think you responded. Thoughts, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
So I'm a big proponent of individual liberty. I think
We
women
can't hear you.
You can't hear
I
me.
muted you earlier. All right, you're unmuted.
Uh,
I asked you to unmute. I just clicked.
oh, sorry. You muted me again.
Sorry about that. That was on accident. There you go.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, sorry. I just like arguing so much. And I can get very abrasive sometimes. But I have a lot of masculine energy, they might say. I guess
That's
as far
sexist.
as this, yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is. As far as this whole thing, I'm a big proponent of individual liberty, and I think that women should be able to make their own choices in their own sex lives. My only suggestion would be to younger women is I always advise younger women I always advise women younger than me, practice saying no, practice telling people no and not needing a reason to justify no. Also, as women, you need to we are just inherently like biologically speaking, we are on average less strong than men. It's important to protect yourself. So have fun if you would like to. Just consider the risks. Be very cautious with your own feelings. Be honest with your own feelings. If you don't want to partake in hookup culture, you don't have to. That's totally fine. And then finally, I would say, men like to complain about being friend zoned. How about all the women who are fuck zoned? Can we talk about that? Can we talk about how many times women get put in the fuck zone where dudes will continue to sleep with one person without ever having the intention of dating them? But it's a big deal if a woman puts a man in the friend zone. But we don't want to talk about the fuck zone.
Women allow that though.
Yeah, but men allow it too, right? Men allow being put into the friend zone.
No. No, you can't. A man can't control if a woman friend zones him, but a woman can certainly control.
A man can walk away from that friendship if he feels like that friendship is not going where he wants it to be.
Yeah, you can.
True.
Yeah.
He doesn't. Don't put yourself through. Like, men, don't put yourself through that. Like, if you think that that she's clearly made it clear that she's not interested in you, and this is just a friend relationship, time for you to walk away if you're too attached to her.
I've put a lot of men in the friend zone.
Let's jump into the next one.
Done.
Do appreciate your question. This one coming in from Deej. He says, an overwhelming majority of studies have found as women's rights have increased, and after second and third wave feminism, women's self-reported happiness has decreased. How do you explain this? And then it says sources Vox, CL, and Guardian. Although I can say that I read this. There's a paper about this. I read this.
Yeah, this is inaccurate. So there's the actual data on this is contradicts this. The stats showing that women are less happy is from 2008. There are now stats based on 2015 data that show that women are now on par or exceeding men in happiness.
Yeah, I would also be curious to know what the numbers would have been for men, and if they've gone up or down. And because I know that with men, they have very high suicide rates and a lot of issues as well. So it might be just, I think as a society in general, there's a lot of things going on outside of that may have been contributing factors as well. I mean, the dissolution of communities and social factors, like a lot of things are going on. So I think a lot of times with these studies, it's just, that's what your piece of paper says. Okay.
Any other thoughts?
I just said that the data is inaccurate, and that women, as of 2015 data, shows that women are on par or exceeding men in happiness.
I think, doesn't it also show that although that women are like more happy, I guess I would say, we have more stress as well. They feel more stress.
I don't know. I don't know about that being shown in the data that I saw. But I do know that there's data showing that stay-at-home mothers in America are more likely to be depressed and be financially insecure, all these other things. So,
Well, I would argue that's an isolation problem as well. It's not, and a societal problem, because stay-at-home moms are. It's interesting to me. Stay-at-home moms are actually like more, I don't know, demeaned or degraded for being stay-at-home moms, and they're
they shouldn't be. I think that the work that you choose to do as a homemaker is still valuable work. But I think I don't think that feminism is necessarily anti-homemaker. I do think that society as a whole is anti-homemaker. So
yes.
Ashley S., I think you had a response.
I will agree with Stardust on that one as far as the society versus feminism. And I was going to say this earlier, but I didn't get a chance to, Stardust. I was going to agree with you earlier in the panel when you were talking about that you feel like most couples nowadays, man, woman, that it's not necessarily economically, realistic for one to be stay at home and the other not to, with housing markets and all things like that. So I agree with you on that. But the only thing I have to say about the study that we just said wasn't actually factually correct. There's also a study out, and this is just because it's relevant. I think there's also a study out that came recently, like why are men sad and lonely? That is also not factually based or correct either. And that was the only point I really wanted to kind of interject on that one. Thank you.
For sure. I'll even play Stardust advocate in the sense that I don't want to take sides. But for the sake of Deej getting you could say that his bang for his buck, is that Stardust, the paper I read at least, though, it did say that it's not outdated because it's not reporting, if you're saying it's from 2008, it's not reporting on happiness in the future. It was reporting on happiness from the 1960s. From the 1960s until 2008 for women. showing that their happiness was decreasing compared to men's.
In comparison, well, based on data from 1972 through 1993, compared to 2015 data, the happiness of women is now on par or exceeding men. The one in 2008 used data from 72 to 93, and I think it compared it to 2008. But yeah.
So, are you conceding though that the paper actually did say that with the kind of like growth of feminism, women's happiness did tend to go down? Because
No, I disagree. I disagree. Well, I mean, that women are less happy. I disagree because now there's an updated study that shows that that is not the case. So
I
if
have a
the
question.
updated
Not a point.
study agreed with
I
that,
just
then I would,
what are the
yeah.
control factors? How are they
well,
basing this? And what are they basing this off of? That was my question.
so
I just think to help clarify. I'm sorry.
this, I mean, controlled factors. Like my guess, the peer review process tends to do a pretty good job of that. Well, like I'll even give because I'm not trying to gang up on you, Stardust. This one's from 2009. Says the paradox of declining female happiness. I'll give the feminist response to this. So this might be a different. You said 2008. This is 2009. It says that women's happiness has gone down both in relative terms and absolute terms compared to men's. Now that doesn't mean that feminism's like, oh, feminism it's caused the decrease in happiness. There are like alternative explanations for it. So remember, correlation doesn't equal causation. So you can grant the correlation. You can say, okay, well maybe it has gone down, which this empirical paper does seem to suggest that it had gone down with the rise of feminism. The
I mean,
idea is you might argue, well, I mean, I'll give you a chance. If you, well, I mean, so are you, would you like, would you do grant that since the 70s it went down, or do you dispute the paper?
I mean, if that's what the paper says, then I have no reason to like dispute the paper, right? I can't say that that paper is wrong about itself, right? But I would say, in counter to that, I would look at places in the world where women's rights are not something that is readily given. Do you think a woman is more happy living in Afghanistan or living in the USA?
Well, yeah. So I told you I'll help you out in the sense that you can grant the correlational nature of the data in the
Hmm.
study. You could just say what the, so I read this like 2 weeks ago, a week ago.
Hmm.
Like the researcher said, it could be that maybe it's not that feminism is causing women to become less happy.
Hmm.
It's more that it's that women are becoming more aware. It's in other words, like it's not that women feminism is decreasing women's quality of life. It might be that it's causing them to become more aware of their comparatively less
Hmm.
quality of life compared to men. Because in a feminist society, the idea would be that if you kind of have the scales taken away from your eyes, it might be the case that you see like, oh wow, like I do have it unfair compared to men. And so it's not that it's feminism like that's making women's lives worse. It's
Hmm.
that it's kind of like opening their eyes to the fact that they're being treated unfairly. And so, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So like in other words, like it
Yeah,
doesn't mean that feminism's like at fault.
Either
yeah,
more aware or more, or if it's more talked about, like if I guess you would have to track what kind of conversations were happening
yeah.
during that time period, and see if that was like a much more talked about at that time, and
Yeah,
like
and again, I can't really. It seems like maybe I thought I was talking about the same set of papers, but the what I was looking at was just like the "Women Are Less Happy" paper from 2008 versus the "No, Women Aren't Less Happy" paper from 2015. So if it's something from 2009, then I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. So
No, you know what
yeah,
you're talking about. I was only trying to push it because I it's something that I find interesting. And so like I said
yeah.
though, it doesn't mean it's anything bad for feminism. Like I said, it could be like the researchers in the paper in the discussion section say, hey, it's just because feminism is like maybe open the eyes of women and seeing that like, for example, that whatever it might be. So
but it
anyway,
has
this
it opened. So this is just being devil's advocate, but for example, if you looked at, say, a paper came out and it said, women feel oppressed, sexually oppressed by men, and it came out during the Me Too movement, and if you tracked the number a year prior versus the year of, like, you'd have different numbers. but women are probably, the number of cases is probably the same in both years,
I see what
but
you're
the
saying.
impression
Yeah.
is different, right?
So I'm looking at the data that it says from the 70s to the 90s, happiness went down, but from the 90s to the 2010s, it's recovered. That's what the data reflects in the paper, I believe.
May I?
Go ahead, Ashley.
So from 2007 to 2009, we hit one of our largest declines in the economy and the unemployment rate that we've had in over a decade before that. So that's why I wanted to know the controls of this. What are the external factors here? Because was there also a paper done on how has men's happiness decreased between this time and this time? I think that if you did that, then I would agree with Stardust's earlier point that that's more of a, or I mean, I'm sorry, Catherine's earlier point that it's more of a humanist kind of thing. That's more humanity in general. So I think that that might be kind of, no offense at all, I just think that that might be kind of a, what is the word I'm looking for? Basically, like a backhanded compliment, but that's not what it is. It's almost like a paper being published to kind of skew everyone's view of what might or might not be actually happening, in my opinion.
This is the problem with
They
these
did include
papers.
men, though. That I
Yeah,
mentioned that
it
before.
includes men. So yeah, but what it shows, what I'm looking at here, it shows that there's a decrease from 1970 to into the 1990s, right? That's when the happiness of men,
1998.
not men, women was decreasing, right? But then around the 2000s, it looks like not 2000, no, mid 1990s to 2000s, and then beyond, you can actually see the graph goes up, and in happiness is actually recovering for women. So
I know, but
yeah.
the only thing I'm trying to say that since the beginning I was trying to say is like, do you see how that doesn't quite answer the question? Because the question is like, why did it go down from the 70s to the 90s?
Oh yeah, I
It doesn't
couldn't
answer to say
Yeah.
like it's kind of like if you're like,
Yeah.
why were you you were unhappy
Yeah.
yesterday, James? And I'm like, I'm happy today. And
Yeah.
you're
Look
like,
at
that doesn't
when
answer
did
the question.
when did the AIDS epidemic come
Well,
out? I mean,
yeah,
there's
again,
so
I
many things
would
that
say,
happened
yeah,
in the 80s and the 90s versus
yeah,
the 70s. I just don't think that that's a based study, I guess.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that there's so many external factors.
yeah.
I think, in my opinion, there's so many external factors
You haven't
that
even
affect
said.
it. that
I would
just
agree with
don't.
what you were saying, yeah, James. That just because we see a decline, doesn't mean that that has anything to do with feminism. It seems more that just because there was a decline doesn't mean it has to inherently do with feminism. It could be any wide variety of things, and as we can see today, happiness is increasing. So should we tie that to feminism or no? I don't know. So yeah.
Fair enough. Ashley, yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to be dismissive.
No,
The only
Yeah.
thing is that well, you mentioned like the control factors. Is the only reason I said like you haven't read it is just that
I
like
know that
unless
I
there's
was asked. Yeah.
yeah, and that's a fair question. Like you obviously you want to control for as much as you can. The only thing is that it's like well, there's unless we have a good reason to believe that some of these factors that we want to have controlled would influence men differently than women. Like it's kind of like well they did include men as a comparison group. So like unless we thought that like a depressed economy would hurt women's happiness more than men's, like we would, we like unless we had a good reason to think that, it'd be kind of like we would just kind of be like up in the air about it.
I see what you're saying, and my promise to you is that I'm going to look into this, and I'm going to find all of the reasons, and then I'll email you.
Well, yeah, like I want to be like I want to be just
I'm
as
not
on
really
your on the pro feminism side as it might initially seem that I'm on the anti-feminism side. Is just that like I said the authors generally speaking gave just as many you could say pro-feminist answers for like why that
Yeah.
correlation is found over time
Hmm.
as you could say non-feminist answers, namely the biggest one I mentioned is like it's not that like feminism made women's lives worse, it just opened their eyes to like the true unfairness in society for women. Like that's a potential explanation that's like you could say
Yeah.
like pro-feminism.
And what I would also say is that
Forward.
this shows that it also shows that there was a decrease in life satisfaction for men as well, that only recently started to kind of recover, although it wasn't at the same rate as the decrease as it was for women. There was a decrease in satisfaction. So
I look forward to reading about that and trying to argue it to death.
Yeah.
That's my
I will say, as a journalist, one of my bones to pick is I cannot ever comment on studies without reading and looking at the deviation standards and how data was gathered, because this is something that I nitpick a lot in reporting. So I have to kind of adhere to that myself and hold myself to the same standard that I nitpick. So
I have the same issue with statistics a lot of times.
I know I took courses on statistics, so
God.
I'm very like I'm kind of yeah, I
love
care
art.
about that a lot, and so and I think a lot of times journalists do not even take the time to read the studies and do not understand statistics even on
Well,
a basic level.
a lot of the times it gets misinterpreted, and then
It
the
does.
journalists perpetuate and propel a false statistic that just sweeps.
Correct. And they
it's
almost
really
never
bad
read
with a lot
the
of
studies
things.
because often they don't even have access to the studies because they cost a lot of money to access. So, and then it gets just repeated from one article to the next. So I talk about that a lot because I talk about media literacy a lot. And so I try not to make the same errors as much as I can. So yeah, I'll
Yeah.
stay away from that.
That was a fun topic. I liked that.
Yeah.
Juicy to say the least. We only have 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up because we're a little bit over time. Sorry about that. If you guys have to run, I don't blame you. It's totally fair game. If you have to run, you can click out. We do want to quick go through these. Dark Bag says, "Can we define feminism, please?" That one we kind of did in the earlier. I think it was Ashley asked people to define it. Chris G says, "Are men and women different, or are they equal? If they are different, how hard should we try to make them equal? Thanks to all. See you in Texas."
Can I answer?
I would
Oh, go ahead.
I would actually say that men and women are equal as human beings, certainly, but we are not the same. We are very different in a multitude of ways, and I think that's really, really important to acknowledge in not only excuse me, not only like physiologically, but mentally. Our emotional status and lots of things go into that. How we handle relationships. We are not the same, but we are certainly equal as human beings.
You got it. Anybody else? Stardust?
Yeah, I would say that
Something super short, really quick. From
Wait,
kindergarten,
wait,
men
sorry.
have penises and girls have vaginas. That's all I have to say.
Duly noted.
I love that movie.
Stardust? Thank you for that, Ashley. Yes.
yeah, I think that again, it's very clear that women and men are not the same. We're very different, right? And on the averages for women and the averages for men in different categories are going to be very different. But does that mean that we shouldn't strive for men and women to have the same amount of mobility in their lives and the same amount of opportunity in their lives? No, I think that women and men should have the ability to make these choices, have their own agency, choose what they want out of their lives, um, uh, regardless of their differences, right? And just like we can take the same thing with short and tall people, right? Are short and tall people equal? Well, I mean, short and tall people, they're different, but should they be equal under the law? Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Can I ask? Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. You can ask me.
I just wanted to ask her a question. How in the U.S. how are women lacking in mobility, or how are they not afforded the same opportunities?
I think in the U.S. for the most part we've closed a lot of these gaps, right? I think in the U.S. for the most part, in the U.S. I guess I would say that the things that I worry about are more like social, societal views of certain things. But I think on a global scale, we still see women uh, oppressed on a global scale. So,
Fair.
Yeah. I think I mean I agree with everyone. Women are obviously different from men. I think women and men should have same opportunities if they should wish to go into similar fields. I mean, I think a lot of times people point to, or women point to specific fields and say, oh, we're not represented in this particular category, but they're often very desirable categories, and people often don't talk about, well, I want to work in construction or these dangerous jobs. So it's often these like really great jobs, and this often relates to the wage gap discussion that comes up a lot. So I think that's something that needs to talk about a little, be talked about a little bit more, and addressed. But I think I think we are different often physically. There's other elements in which we can be different, but every person is an individual also, and we have to look at everyone as an individual as opposed to just a gender or a group of people or race or whatnot. And I think individuals first.
You got it. With that, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to be back for a post-credit scene letting you know about upcoming events, including that huge conference in Plano, Texas on Saturday, November 19th. But I've got to tell you, folks, if you have not already, now is the perfect time. You can click on our guest links below, including Ashley S., Stardust, Freely Ashley, and Catherine. What are you waiting for? Even if you're listening via the podcast, as all of our debates and panels are uploaded to the podcast within 24 hours of them happening, you can find our guest links there as well. You should click on them right now. So one last thank you very much, Stardust, Freely Ashley, Catherine, and Ashley S. It's been a true pleasure to have you with us tonight.
Love to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for having me. I think feminism is like the best thing in the whole world. And you should check me out. Thanks.
In the whole world.
Yeah, in the whole world.
I think sushi
in the whole room, the whole wide room.
100%.
And dogs.
Yes.
Yeah, dogs are the best thing in the whole world.
Catherine likes dogs over cats. I got your address, Catherine. Thank you. Yeah.
One last one. Supreme
Thank you so much, James.
Supreme Emperor Kiza sent in a last minute question. Says, James, watch Aiden Paladin's girl boss video, and this explains plenty. Let's see. They said why they say that feminism is not good. They say it's quite an eye opener for many. Have any of you guys seen? They say that this is a challenge to feminism. This is
I haven't seen it.
Paladin's girl
Aiden
boss
Paladin. I've been on her show before, actually. It's funny. I've been on Aiden Paladin's show, and we have like quite the opposite in our political beliefs, but I've never seen that video. I'll have to check it out.
Ashley S., are you a big fan of Aiden Paladin?
Nope.
Gotcha. I've never seen it, but I appreciate that. And so, want to say, do you have anything, Ashley? Oh, I couldn't tell you.
I just wanted to say, Stardust, it's always fun being on a panel with you. I love you, and I love to hate you. Like you're the shit.
Yeah, no,
you're fun
no
to
problem.
argue with, I will say.
Yeah, don't take anything that I say personally. I just really enjoy arguing a lot. It's like my masculine side coming out. So yeah, really.
And I just noticed one of the comments. I wasn't really reading them during this, but I did see one comment that was about feminists. Why aren't they supporting Iran more? And I did want to say feminists should absolutely be supporting the women in Iran more right now. And
100%.
Shameful that there isn't more support in the media and by women and everybody in general.
I agree, 100%.
Thank you for saying that.
You got it. We'll end with that. So, as I mentioned, all of our guests are linked in the description, folks. What are you waiting for? You can click on those links right now, and I'll be back in just a moment with.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that to turn into a 3v1. I wish I could have yelled more, though. Darcy did a great job. Thank you. I don't know if I did a great job, but, I think as good as it could have been. So, I think all of us were trying to be respectful at the same time. No, you destroyed it. Awesome. Thank you. It's easy to defend feminism. Yeah.